Play World. This time around we're going to be making Thresh's Hook and Mask. And if you're interested in getting hold of them, check out the link in the description and see how that is possible. At any rate, we are going to be starting off this work and making pretty easy work of it because it's largely a sculpted build. We're going to be using XPF foam, pink foam, insulation foam for this. Now, the thing I have to say every time, because everyone loses their minds in the comments, is wear a mask, and you can clearly see I am doing so, and I would encourage others to do so as well. As when I was young, I was a little bit immortal, and so I thought I could get away with it and develop a cough, so I can personally attest that, yes, wear a mask. That is a thing for this. Now, that being said, most everything in my shop will end my life in some shape or form, so practice general shop safety as well. That's probably good. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting as many pieces as I can out with a saw. Whether it be a foam saw or a hand saw, it's fine, but the idea is that it saves you time and it keeps all of those particles that we're sanding off now from building up. If you don't need to file and shape them, they don't become a problem later on. They're basically a big chunk of foam and not particles, so keep that to a minimum, yes, if I can. The reason why I like using XPF foam as a sculpting material is because it's really easy to use, and it's very, very light. So for large sculpted builds, it's fairly easy to use in comparison to, say, wood, and much cheaper to use than other options. As you can see, the tools I use are fairly easy to get a hold of. A saw, a rasp, or a file even, and just a sanding sponge. And normally you wouldn't think that sanding sponge could do much, but it is straight up eating and sanding and smoothing out this piece with ease. This is a very soft material in that regard, so it makes this work very, very quick and simple. And that's why I really like it, even though I have to kind of wear a mask. But yeah, so in the time I've also made the little bone chain links for his hook, and we're going to be adding those on later. Those are largely made of scraps from the main piece that I cut the hook away from. They don't need to be particularly uniform. Making them interesting and unique is just fine, if you ask me. And they're kind of this comical, cartoonish bone shape anyway, so as long as that's achieved, A+. I'm going to be sanding these down with the sanding sponge, but because Thresh's texture is very, very gritty, at least, well, he's got a ton of skins. Anyway, the one I'm working from is pretty gritty, so I'm not worried about sanding it down incredibly smooth. Although you can absolutely do that with a sanding sponge and achieve some good detail work here. The hardest part was kind of the pentagon that's like off center and then turned, and I spent more time on that than pretty much any other detail on the piece. But because it's a soft material, we don't want it to take con damage, and to protect it from this con damage, we're going to be adding a coating to it. It's a very, very easy coating of plaster of Paris. Yay! If you want to thicken it up and make it a bit more durable, you can switch out the water for PVA glue, white glue, Elmer's glue, but you need to be quicker and more careful because it's a thicker consistency. And I personally like to start out with a very thin consistency because that allows me to cover the smoother, already finished bits. I don't want to lose detail and definition because my coating is too thick and too heavy. So in this way, I actually work backwards. I start off with a very milky mixture of plaster of Paris and finish off all the nice smooth bits first, and then work my way up to where there's more problems and defects and textures I'm not happy with, or places where I need filling. So as I'm working, the plaster of Paris is naturally going to start setting and congealing and become thicker. And towards the end, as it's becoming thicker, I'm going to start filling in those bigger problem areas and make the best use of my plaster of Paris. So that's why I'm going kind of backwards than you might expect. I'm not filling in the big problems first, I'm filling in the small problems first. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, we've base coated this in a bit of black and gray acrylic paint. And I'm not going to show you that because it's fairly straightforward. You put black paint on it and it's black paint and it's gray paint. Yay! Block painting! But the next step is adding the raised details. Thresh emits light, and so what we're going to concentrate on is bringing out the high and low sections of this paint job. So we're going to begin blending some of the browns and greens into this work, making sure that the raised areas have more of the heavier details than the lower sections. Additionally, we're going to be making the piece more uniform in texture by putting a wash of this dark green over it. As it, well, it's all kind of greenish anyway. He's got a very swampy, glowy effect to him. But we are going to next go into the uniform lighting aspects of creating this piece. And for that, we've got that kind of really bright neon green paint there. And what we're going to try and do is create a separation between the high and low areas. For this, we're going to be doing some edge highlighting and some dry brushing. I brought out my fan brush here because it holds enough paint. It's actually a nice big fan brush. Enough paint to get it on the surface, but not so much that I lose control when I have a big, heavy, thick brush. So a thin brush allows me to touch the surface without putting a ton of paint down, and it allows me to drag it across the piece here. And I'm just kind of hitting the highest section of the prop here. It also creates a bit more depth, and this on the chains of the bone chain sections, it's kind of this weird, lovely crackling effect as well, which is pretty cool. But for the head of the scythe itself, I'm running along the raised details to bring those out and create a depth between the raised and lower sections, as I mentioned earlier. I think the last thing I'm going to do is kind of link the chains together, and I've got some cord, and I'm simply going to punch a hole in the end of the chain of the bone and hot glue the cord into place. And it's a fairly simple solution to this problem. Next up, we are going to be making the mask, and it's actually a bit posable. That's kind of cool. And yeah, it's posable. It also floats a bit. Hope you guys enjoy. Good times to all. Hurrah! Hey, if you like this video, check out finalcosplaycore.com for the second part. See you there.